pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, I appreciate everybody being here today. I know this has been something we've been working on since everyone's pretty much been in these chairs. So the way we're going to kind of go about this today is we're going to do a work session first. We can't do public comment, but I do want to acknowledge that David Gardner is here with the Sports Commission, newly Franklin Sports Association. Thank you. Sorry, a little tongue-tied there, David. And then we have Mr. Quarles here, and I know he's here just because he had nothing else to do and he wanted to hang out. I know he's with the fair, and you know, we are looking forward to working with the fair for many, many years. Who's behind you? Who's that? Oh, Robin Antonucci with our tourism is back there. We have Mr. Codell. We have Keith from our bond company. We have Amy Quatman, our treasurer. Randy with Hitchcock Group, and then the famous one and only Mr. Phil, you know, with the State Journal. So I think everybody knows him. So as most of you all know, we've been working on the first phase park plan at Lakeview Park for probably over 3 years now. This court has been involved the whole time they've been on for over 2 years. Through that process, we have had multiple Hitchcock Group has done a phenomenal job doing the surveying. They've done that in person. They came out to the park multiple weekends, did it online. We had a raving response to the questionnaire and stuff, and that's going back a couple years. So anything, I guess what I want to do is open it up to the court. If anybody has any questions about the project or anything, we have people here that can hopefully answer any questions. You know, like I said, Mr. Codell, Keith, Randy would probably be our three main, other than obviously our treasurer, Amy, would be the ones we'd be able to call on because they are part of this project. So I'm going to open up to the floor, and we'll go from there. And Charlie, obviously, if you want to get up and say anything before we get going?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead.
I'm up.
Well, I mean, if you want to, sure.
I'm up.
Why don't you go ahead and start us off? I got to tell you all, Charlie informed us today that his shirt is mint.
Mint, and it's lucky. I've got lucky socks on. I've got all kinds of stuff, kind of being real hopeful. Rabbit's foot, yeah, you name it.
Charlie, how long have you been how long have you been in Franklin County Park System?
28 years, yeah.
Okay.
Park was bought in 1991, and I took the job in 1996.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about what this experience has been for you and kind of what your thoughts are.
Did you have a question?
I just want to make a point. And I wasn't aware of this. You just made the statement you've been there 28 years. 27 is usually retirement. I know it is in the teacher world. And you're still there because you want to be, right?
Absolutely, and this project has a lot to do with that.
Outstanding.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for Lakeview Park and the community and the region. Surrounding states are going to come in and use a facility like this if we can get it passed and get it built. You know, I just look at it from a standpoint of a lot of times in parks and recreation, we build facilities that really don't turn a whole lot of revenue. You know, like we built a splash pad a few years back. Well, it's free to the public. You know, we've built this and that and other things. Sometimes there's some fees involved in other parks and recreation activities with team sports or going to a pool, things like that. The really neat thing about what I see from my seat about this facility is it's a revenue generator for our whole county that might someday help pay for other things in the park. Might buy a fire truck, might buy a police car, a sheriff's car. So that's what I want. I hope you guys, and I know you do, you're the fiscal court. I mean, it's the money side of it, of running the county. And I know you've got good questions and a lot of concerns, and you know, but it's just like softball. You know, I mean, you gotta get in the batter's box and take a swing. I mean, and this, I think you got a chance to hit a home run. I really do. So I won't be long. That's my 2 cents. I'm happy and proud to be a part of Franklin County and be the Parks Director and be a part of this project. So if there's anything I can do along the way, you all know where I'm at.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Okay, I'm going to open up to the court just to have a conversation. Like I said, does anybody have any questions for any of the people that are with us, or talk amongst ourselves, or?
Is there someone here that would mind going through each one of these bids and explain them exactly to us? I wasn't there at the opening, I don't know who all was, but it was not me.
Okay.
So,
He's getting, he's working with your IT guy.
Okay, so Wes is trying to get on Zoom, so, okay, we'll circle back to that. Once Wes gets on, then he can kind of go over these bid packages and maybe what's included in each of them. Any things for discussion?
Well, I'll go a whole lot.
Okay.
We haven't had any conversations really in front of the public yet about this project in terms of the financials, the design, the final picks of the design and what the scope looks like. We did that in a work session that wasn't televised, just one only, unfortunately. Can we kind of walk through the decisions? We have a few pages here of some options that were presented to us before about shade sails and otherwise here. The project grew from this court initially discussing one concession stand to now two fully commercial kitchen concession stands. We have 7 fields with turf on all of them. We have some other options that I don't know if we've had a conversation yet about wanting to do any of those, whether we want to cut back on any part of the project as this court sees it, or if we want to add on those elements. Can we kind of walk through all of that if we might?
That's fine. Randy, you want to kind of get to the podium. So Randy's with the Hitchcock Group. I want to commend them for all your public surveys that you've done, conversations with the community. I think when you all did it, you felt like it was one of the better responses that you have. And I do want to point out to the court, when this went to an RFP, 3 or so years ago, there were 7 firms that replied to the RFP. At that time, the court chose the Hitchcock Group primarily because of the build-out rate. I mean, they were like 80% or 85% of the projects they designed, they built out. And so for us, that was very important at that time. And I know one of the things we've all talked amongst ourselves is we do not want to be a court or a county that pays for a plan and puts it on a shelf. So this is our opportunity to follow through on a project that could be transformational for our community. So, Randy, do you want to go over anything as far as, I can talk a little bit more, I guess, about the money, because I met with Mr. Codell and was really trying to get the budget down from where it started off at, Jim, help me out here, 15.5? Does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
About 15.5, and then Deputy Kennedy and I went to the office and met with Jim and met with Wes Davis, his main guy, and we just really kind of went through the project and was trying to get the price where we thought it would make sense for our community. So you want to talk a little bit about shade structures and things like that, maybe?
Sure. So I don't want to go all the way back because I'm sure you've all read through the master plan.
We
at
have,
some
but the
point,
public hasn't been part of this
Okay.
conversation at all yet. So I've got lots of questions from the constituents, and I want to make sure we put it all out there for them to understand what we're awarding, because it's obviously going to go through, and what we're getting for what we're spending.
Yeah.
So.
Well, okay, then I'll start off with the master plan. When we went through the master planning effort for the park, we did online surveys, and then we had one day that we went to the park and had just public input, and people had an opportunity to fill out little surveys that we brought along there. Got a lot of feedback about the improvements that people wanted to see in the park. And one of those items was obviously improving those fields. And then we had another consultant on our team, Pros Consulting, who went through the number side of it. So we're landscape architects, we design things. Pros was all about the numbers and making sure that what we were hearing and putting in the plan would actually be usable and doable. So you'd be able to actually make some money with this. Now, when you get into some of your shade structures and those things, one of the items or some of the conversations that we had was, yes, we'd like to have these fields and be able to have, bring people in from out of the county to spend their money here and make money at it. But as local folks, we want to be able to walk and still enjoy the park. And so we included shade structures, those shade structures that you see there. Some of them are along the trail, and they'll really serve two purposes. One, people that live here in the county that just want to go spend time in the park, they can walk around, they can have a little family reunion, they can have cookouts out there if they want. But then when you're having a tournament, teams can hang out in those locations as well. So we tried to, the things that went into the park based on what we heard from folks, we wanted them to serve two purposes. So that's kind of the gist of all the shade structures that you see.
I guess, could you walk me through, and this court and anybody that's listening ultimately, exactly what was within the scope of the bid packages as far as the term of the seven field complex? What does that encompass? What are we getting, and what's in the design, and what was excluded for us to have a conversation about adding?
Okay, so, and Jim, you might need to jump in on this as far as what was excluded. But as far as the overall, we obviously 7 fields. We have areas, plenty of seating. We've got shade structures. We've got the concessions buildings, and what drove that initially, we were going with, one restroom, one concession area, and then another that was kind of a minimal concession building with restrooms. But we went and did a tour of E-Town and their complex, and we listened to some of the challenges that they had to deal with, and their recommendation was have 2 separate kitchens, because they didn't, and I think they're still grilling hot dogs and things in one of their little back areas. Yeah, in the grass. So
Could I ask you just quickly, because that's a little tweak from what's been told to me before. E-Town, I thought, its recommendation was to put in a commercial kitchen with full fryers, not 2 separate facilities. I thought that was their recommendation because they didn't put in a fully commercial functional kitchen. They're having to use concessions equipment, right?
But Squire, what we had talked about in our committee meeting with them is, and we looked at doing 1 full kitchen and then the 3-plex doing just a warming kitchen. But what they learned in E-Town was they can't use one quad or the other without firing the kitchen up. And then with labor cost, it was cost too much money to run people down. I think what he had talked about in that meeting, a facility like ours like Elizabethtown in Indiana, if they would have the deep fryers, they would make an additional $400,000 a year between French fries and chicken fingers. So that's why.
The other reason they said that, if you're playing on one set of fields, your kitchen's all the way across the field, and people, less apt to use it unless it's right there. So that was another reason for the 2 kitchens.
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of what drove both of those. And then as far as, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but we also have batting cages at each one of those, the 4-plex and the 3-plex, and I think the batting cages did those go out
It might be an alternate.
at an alternate?
But I will say about the alternate, so, we were trying to get this project where we could get it off the ground, basically. So the idea is that the sports commission that has been created will hopefully hire a sports management company. And one of the responsibilities of that sports management company will be to go find sponsors and things like that, people want to contribute. So the thought is, as we work through the process, let's say a shade structure is $1,000, we might go to Squire Wisman and say, would you like to buy a shade structure and then put your name on it? So, I think absolutely possibilities of putting all that back in. We were just trying to get it to a point that the court felt comfortable and we can at least start the project.
Well, let me make a rundown here of what I'm trying to get at. We have 7 fields, right? 2 commercial kitchens that are also restrooms, changing locations for teams, as well as water stations and bathrooms for both complexes. These are effectively a 4-plex and a 3-plex that back up to each other. There are bleachers, shade structures for spectators as well as the teams, and some additional upgrades around the landscaping of those. We're not including batting cages, we're not including additional parking at current. Shade sails generally over all of those outdoor elements were not included, and I think there was a 4th alternate that I can't remember that we were not including in that. But the scope of the project is to replace the current baseball fields and the soccer fields that are adjacent to them with this complex. I'm wanting to ask, we had a number of questions in our last meeting with you, sort of what we may think the average attendance and use of those facilities would be, and when the public can be able to use those, and that's maybe generally a question for everybody.
That's all good information.
Just wanted to get it all out there.
So basically, and I don't want to speak for the whole court, but this has kind of been the conversation, and if I misspeak, somebody please tell me. The thought is that this will be used, I think they guesstimated about 32 weekends out of the year, would average 50 to 60 teams from, all over. So obviously more people in our hotels, restaurants, and businesses. And then the thought is that basically Monday through Thursday would be available for all local, and we can play girls softball up to college, and we're hoping Kentucky State University will make this their home field. And then we can also do up to U13 baseball on these fields too. So they'll be interchangeable as far as that's concerned. I miss anything, Randy?
Yeah, well, and just to tag on to what you just said, in some of the early public meetings, we did have people from the university come to these meetings and tell us what they were looking for and what they needed. So I don't know what conversations have been had since then, but they chimed in on the design.
And I think, so originally when we had bid this out, we did all turf on infields and outfields, and it was very, very expensive. So when we went to E-Town and talked to them, and, we always look at things like, and we went, Indiana, we've been all over just looking at fields and everything. Has been a journey. But I always ask, what would you do different? E-Town's biggest one was the fryers and the grill. That was the biggest thing. But most of them said around here, you really just need turf, artificial turf on the infields, and just regular grass on the outfields. And then you can pretty much be guaranteed not to be rained out. So I think that's the biggest thing when you're booking tournaments. And even our local sports using them is being able to use them as soon as the rain stops.
Yeah.
Judge, can we talk a little bit about longevity of this site? We've had a discussion about the needs the costs that are going to be every 10 years, which really need to be built into every year of operation in my mind. With 7 turf fields, shade sails and things that get tattered and frayed and fade, and other elements that might need to be replaced. Fryers are sort of notorious for short lifespans. Can you give us part of that discussion you had with us before about what the expectation is for replacement costs that we're going to see every 10 years? Sort of, in my mind, voting for this project is not a one and done. There are 4 alternates that we're going to try to fund. There are quite a few additional elements that downgrades or just things that were excluded from the plan, as well as those maintenance costs that we're jumping into something that is going to cost, I'm kind of thinking, $2 million a year in maintenance indefinitely. So I just want to make sure the public understands that.
How did you come up with $2 million?
Well, he said $8 million for turf replacement cost every 10 years.
No, he was incorrect. I went back and talked to his guy, and so I can tell you that. So he was basing that on an entire field. So he misspoke.
Okay.
So the fields last
told to us.
12 years or so, and it's estimated about $250,000 per field to replace the infield. So that number was way, way high.
That's more digestible.
Yeah, that's more digestible. And let's not forget, a lot of this is going to be, most of it or all of it will be funded by the new sports commission. So, we have a 2% hotel tax that, in the first year.
We hope.
What do you mean we hope?
We hope that, the revenues are generated to be able to sustain and replace and pay.
Oh, it
And
will.
depends on how we,
So I think first year is estimated about 600,000, Amy, does that seem right? So we've run the numbers, because I know what we give to the Grand and things like that, and that's existing hotels as it is right now.
We have to remember, this is to generate income. It's not a build it and walk away from it. There's gonna be 32 to 36 tournaments a year that's gonna be played here, and you're gonna be generating income. It's not gonna fall back to the court for 100% of the cost.
Randy, you want to go ahead? I'll probably cut you off. I apologize.
Well, you basically said what I was going to say. SFC was at that last meeting, then we're working with them right now in Paducah. Paducah has hired them to run their new sports complex. And, we've, in hearing what they had to say about long-term, we've got to take care of these things. These are the products you use that will hold up well. That's what drove the decisions, a lot of the decisions in the design of this complex. So.
Squire Blackburn, do you have a hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, being on the last court that kind of got this ball rolling and got started, and then moving on to the park committee, I know a lot of flash has been put into generating revenue. And that's of huge importance, but the bottom line in my book, from the angle that I'm coming at, is we're creating something for our community, and that we can't afford. We're creating something we can't afford, and we had, as our jobs, being the fiscal court, figure out how we can afford it, figure out how we can raise the quality of life here in Frankfort, figure out when people want to move here and they look at what we have, how we can make that better, how we can make it more appealing, and that's what drove, in my opinion, how we did this. That's what drove how we created these fields that were able to be played on, rain or shine, with low cancellation rates. This will be an economic driver to not only build future projects in our park and be able to fund things that we can't afford. This makes it affordable for us. This makes it affordable to look towards things that are also on that comprehensive park plan that we had. We had over 1,200 people fill that out. That was huge.
Yep.
I remember when that came out. I remember being at the park when people were coming. I remember the questions. I think there's been a lot of misinformation. Well, we're going to be here for out-of-town teams. No. The out-of-town teams are going to come, and they're going to stay in our hotels, and they're going to eat at our restaurants, and they're going to pay that transit room tax. And that tax is going to the sports commission. The sports commission will pay the debt payment on it. The sports commission will make these decisions. And it gives us an opportunity to get outside of our coffers and do the rest of the plan. Like you said, it was 80 to 90% of the projects that you all design are built.
Yeah.
And it's not because you've got some magic hoodoo. It's because you make efficient, affordable, feasible plans for communities with a lot of insight and a lot of depth. We went to Indianapolis. We went to Bowling Green. We went to McCracken County, Paducah. We went to these different parks, several of them. Judge Mueller got hit by a foul ball at one of them. And
That's right.
we could have funded one of the fields with that. And we saw, and we asked people, and we talked to them. So I don't feel like that we're getting into the weeds, because everybody needs to know all these things. And there's been a lot of misinformation about how this is going to affect our tourism. This is going to give our tourism more money than they've ever dealt with. Yeah. There was 4 or 5 hotels in McCracken when they started. There's 12 now. And this, how many years has it been? 5?
maybe 10, but yeah.
maybe, a little,
Is it
yeah,
5?
well, full operation. So we're talking about exponential growth that just drives the community forward. Not this, I can tell you, I've spent countless hours reading, talking to experts, talking to folks, talking to people in our community. How does this work? And like Judge said, our number one question was, what did you do wrong? What did you do wrong at this facility? What would you do different? What would you leave out that wasn't important? What would you add that you should have had in the beginning? So when we've cut costs and when we've looked at things that maybe we don't need to do that, not because of the money per se, but because the feasibility of where that would put us at making this project get off the ground and move forward. If we get all of the parts to the motor, on the motor, it will run. And as it runs, it's going to create momentum and other things will come. So there's, I could go on and I don't want to, but the bottom line is this isn't just generating revenue. Look what we can do, look how much money we can make. No, this is look what we can make for our community that they can enjoy and that other people are going to pay for and not us. In my tenure on the court, we've kept taxes flat 3 years and lowered them twice. I don't plan on changing that. And I believe that projects like this give us the ability to stay that course. So I'll just let you keep speaking and we'll go from there. But I just wanted to clear up a few things that people are thinking, and I'm not some pie in the sky guy. It's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies. And if we build it, they will come. No, if we build it the right way, with the right planning, we put the right people in the sports commission, we get the right sports facilities company to come in and manage, they want to manage a successful park.
Yeah.
They want to generate revenue for themselves. They can't possibly do it if it's a failure. They can't possibly do it if it's not set up correctly. So we've uncovered lots of stones. We've picked around in the weeds. We've talked to everybody from the maintenance guys, the guys cleaning out the trash cans at these parks, to the people that run them, to the people that foot the bill for them. And I just want everybody to know, this hasn't been done lightly. This hasn't been done behind closed doors. I talk to everybody about it. And we have our meetings, and everybody's welcome to come to them. And, me asking Joe Citizen, what color do you want the seats? I'm sure they have their preferences. But we've looked at UV ratings. We've looked at how the sun affects different colors. We've had proof of this fleshed out in projects that have already been done that we've put our eyes on and seen personally. And we've gotten recommendations from that. This isn't your first rodeo. I'm sure you've changed a few things since you've started in your business, and you've done things that don't work, you don't do that anymore.
Right.
And the things that do, that's what you cling to. So we've really put a lot of thought into this, and it's going to be a growing, moving target. But we've got to get started, and we've got to get the ball rolling, and it's never going to be cheaper than it is right now.
Thank you, Squire. Squire Harris.
I just want to reiterate what Prince Squire Blackman said. I've got 5 children. The oldest is 30, the youngest is 15. And I've spent that many years traveling to other states, other counties. We've never played in Franklin County. In all the years that my kids have been coming up, we've never had the opportunity to play in Franklin County.
How much money did you spend a weekend in another county?
$1,500 or more. Easily. By the time you pay for your fuel, your hotel, your food, it's a no, it's just the way it is. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen what this could do for a community. Firsthand, I've seen it. And I'll say again, I've never been able to play in Franklin County because we didn't have it.
And I do want to make sure, thank you, Squire Harris. I do want to make sure people realize our master plan that Hitchcock did with all pros, engineering, everything has been on our website for probably 2 years. So it's a 258-page document that basically lays the entire park out. It states what other things we need in this community that we don't potentially have here now. I remember one of the studies found that we need more land, and that's, you know, as we talk about potentially this other park we have, being able to maybe take some things over to that park as we move down the road. So if anybody does have questions that is watching, feel free to look at our website and look at the master plan. Squire Black.
I want to add, Judge, that was the impetus in buying the land on Duckers Road. That was the impetus.
Yep.
Our plan said we need more land.
Yep, you're right.
And at the price that we got it for, it was a no-brainer. So I've heard a lot, you know, there's always naysayers. Why are they wasting money on that? Our community said we needed it. That's why.
Yeah, I was going to say the master plan is the way it came together. We had so many people that said, this is what I want. Why don't we have this here? We want this in our community. We had to put together a plan that you could actually, that would financially work. And that was where pros came in on our team and helped us look at the financial side. And one of the things that drove that was we need to bring, sports tourism is crazy right now. And it is a great moneymaker for a lot of communities. And so that was, when you look at the master plan and you take a look at how that works, it's not just pretty pictures. There's also a business side backing it up that says if you make these kinds of improvements, you'll get people to come into the community, you'll make money off that. So.
I just want to say one more thing and I'll be done with it, but I've never been to a park facility that's been empty. Whether it be the people that's in there, the people who live there, I've never been to an empty park. And, you know, for this community to have the facilities to use at their disposal, whatever they want to, I mean, it's open. It doesn't close.
Right.
I just think it's very important.
Squire Tanner.
I have a few comments to make, which probably a little different from what everybody else take here, but I believe that we need to live in the now. And now, this is on the table. This is on the table. Not what's down the road. It could also, there's other things going on that could enhance the livability of this community, but it's not on the table. This is on the table. This is now. So then to ignore that and try to bring other thing out and look at things that's not now, we're getting into a picture that we have no earthly idea what is. Things are very unstable everywhere right now, but this is on the table now. Not to take action now would make this probably go up. Everybody thinks inflation is going to continue and everything has to be rebid, redone, and it's still going to be the now. I think it's not 1980 and it's not 2030, it's now. And this is on the table now. And this is what we're going to deal with now. And if there's a problem or a question with the bidding, or if it doesn't match up, and I've heard Amy speak, I've heard everybody talk about the money, and obviously that's a big question because this is the fiscal court of Franklin County, which is also a very big deal. If you don't think it's a big deal, you're in the wrong place. But we have to act today as it is today. If you want to live some other time, you can't. It's now. So I'm not talking about this design or that design, because my granddaughter's 28 years old and my grandson's 22 or 3. So that day's gone for me. I might go watch yours, but I'm not gonna watch mine.
What about great-grandkids?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
Got fingers crossed on that.
Squire Wisman.
Thanks, Judge. I appreciate everyone's positive sales pitch, right, for this. And at this point, that's not where my mind is going, right? I'm trying to make sure that in awarding or reviewing the award of this, that I'm answering all the questions that I have fielded from the community. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misinformation. I want to make sure that I have the answers that are firm. We know what we're buying, and we put that out to the community. So, I'm not trying to nitpick things. I'm trying to answer the questions that I have fielded. And the positive sales pitch and the plan is done. There's components of it that I don't agree with. There are components I do agree with. I think there are a lot of things that have merit. I think this has merit. But at the moment, we are considering, paying $14 million for a project and I have everything else to consider too, right? I have bridges that need replaced, I have people that need water access, I have infrastructure that needs to be built, internet and otherwise. So that is where this court has to come to everything, and I'm just trying to make sure we have answers for everything I've heard over the last couple of years, because we haven't done this publicly. We haven't picked this plan apart because it hasn't been done until complete really until this point that we can do that for the public to understand exactly what they're getting. So my next question was, in the last presentation, it was said that we did not have final blueprints for those concession stands yet. Have we been able to get those to know exactly how those are built out? Because I was hoping we'd have a little bit of ability to comment on those about the final design of them as a court, but I don't see that.
They haven't
here.
finalized those.
We won't, they're very proprietary, so once we sign the contract, they'll give them to us. I mean, we have schematic layout of
Yeah.
the bathrooms, the
Yeah.
umpire rooms, the concessions. They've talked, because we hired them, this court hired them, I think $8,500 to design the kitchens. So that's all pretty much done. That's what they do for a living. But the actual blueprints for, for Codell's purpose, we still are lacking until, they don't want to hand them over until we,
Not going to.
yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
But it's hard to make a decision on a theoretical, just because the presentation that was given to us last time, there was blueprints and then schematics that didn't match. So I'm
Right.
concerned about those.
Yeah.
That what is going to be the final build? Will it functionally operate the way it should for that park? So I'm just
will.
reiterating my concern for
Yeah.
you all for that. So.
And that's understandable, because it's been a little bit of a challenge. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Randy, so, can you all hear me? Sorry.
Oh, we can hear you. That's Wes. Loud and clear,
So,
buddy.
Eric, good question, and you are correct that some of the layouts do not jive. They're not exactly the same. Structurally, we know what we're building. Both the kitchen people has given us pretty decent details on their end. The ROMTech pre-manufactured people have given us details, so we know structurally what it is. We know what the layouts are. What we really don't know is some of the finishes. So we know they're going to be tongue and groove ceilings. We know it's drywall. We don't know exactly where the paint starts from drywall to a different finish and things like that. But for the most part, Randy and I know what this is going to look like at the end of the day. And like the judge said, as soon as the project's approved, I think we'll have those drawings within 2 weeks. And we put some precautionary allowances in this project to help offset any of that if it was a little more or a little less than what we had anticipated. So we've talked through that with the design team, and we feel we've got it covered either way.
Okay. I thank you. That just makes me a little nervous to review something and start approving bids for elements of a design that we don't have final designs on, right? So, and I get where, the contractor's coming from, but
The design is basically at like 90%. So it's not going to change dramatically between now and the end. So
unless this
what
court-
you see on
unless this
paper
court
is
decides they want to
basically
change
what's-
something.
unless the court decides they want
but
to
we don't
change
have
it.
that in front of us to be able to do that. So,
Until we
Well-
sign and Squire, I'm happy the day we sign the contract and they send those blueprints over, I'll be happy to send them out, because obviously they're not started on anything until we
Well,
tell
it's
them to go, so.
what I want to make sure we have the ability, if we want to tweak something as a court because we feel like it would work better because we know our community best, we need to be able to do that. So, Judge, I guess really kind of the final question I have before we get into the bids is if you could speak maybe a little bit about, how the relationship between the Sports Commission and the Sports Management Company will work. I'm a little hesitant that we're proceeding down the road. I almost feel like we needed to have the Sports Commission or Sports Management entity kind of identified and working with us in tandem as we go down this, because the financing structure could change drastically depending upon what final contract the Sports Commission creates with the management company, right? Or if they decide to they could, I doubt that they ever would, right? But they could elect 10 years from now to run it on their own without a sports, and that may change. And it's going to be subject somewhat too to how much cash we interject up front. And I think that's where we're probably going to disagree the most as a court, is how much money we put of our reserves up front to pay for this thing and how much debt we put on that Sports Commission for that management company to service, but can you speak about that relationship as you all understand it, because I've not been in those conversations
No,
yet.
all good, yeah, and it has been a journey to get to this point. So, the way I understand it, and I agree, I think it would be nice to have a sports management company on now, almost as an owner rep, you know?
Right.
But to Amy's point, we don't have the money now. The new, hotel, fee doesn't come on until July 1, so there's no money being generated yet. So my anticipation is, the court will decide in the next couple months who's on that new sports commission. It will be voted on in this courtroom, you know, in front of everybody, who's going to represent basically us as we move forward. I am going to say that the first thing they'll do is put an RFP out for a sports management company. It will be up to them to get them hired and to get them under contract. And then the way the hotel fees will work is, as always, they'll come here, and then quarterly, I believe, quarterly? Monthly, I'm sorry, that's right, we changed it. So monthly, she would send money to them. And just remember that every year, it's all KRS, the sports management firm, not sports management, sports commission has to do a budget, and it has to be approved by us every year, just like, you know, all the other budgets. So, did I answer everything there, Squire Wistman?
Just if I can,
What I missed?
one point of clarification, there's a bit of confusion I've heard already that the Sports Youth Association, we have a representative here, is not the same thing.
No.
That has been something that's been created
Yep.
to manage primarily the city's sporting activities.
Well,
This
city
is
and
going to
county,
be-
yes, but I think what happened there was the city, for some reason, decided to not run this youth sports anymore. David and some amazing parents, I guess you could say, have come together and worked very hard to create this organization so our kids can keep playing sports this year. So we'll have meetings, and then we'll have a decision to make, because a sports management company will run local sports if we want them to, or they continue to do what they do, and then we just help schedule the fields and things like that. So that's going to be an ongoing relationship between that organization and ours, I guess you could say. So, but it's whatever really they want to do. If they want to continue running the local sports, you know, like they're doing currently, they're more than happy to. If they decide, you know what, we're just going to let you all handle it, and then that organization would oversee it. That's the way I understand it, I hope that makes sense.
And Judge, could we elaborate just a little bit, because we've had conversation, but we've not got into it whatsoever, that the sports commission could, you know, it could just be this. We could say that we want them to run just this facility, just focus on this commercial facility, and our Parks Department is going to take care of everything else. Or it could be, as we've discussed, that we create a broader picture, we create a comprehensive outdoor park recreation plan, and that we have the sports commission really use the revenues from this entity to build out things countywide, like access to the Elkhorn Creek and the Kentucky River, and you know, kind of, if you would, explain maybe to me and the public how we see that process and that definition of the scope of that entity's work progressing over the next few months until the point that we assign these people by vote to the sports commission, and at what point do we define sort of what their role is, I suppose, is what I'm
That's a
getting
valid
to.
point, and I think that's where we work together with the sports commission, and we all share what our goals are. But you're right, I mean, sports is a lot of things. It's canoeing, kayaking, it's soccer, it's everything else. So we're not just talking about this one facility here. So, and I know the way sports management companies work is they can run anything. They run indoor pools, they run soccer, they run the whole gamut, because in E-Town they have soccer, baseball basically. So it's kind of all what you want to pay them to do. But I think as far as we move forward, creating the sports commission, it will be up to us to have meetings with them and share what our thoughts are and what our vision is as far as what sports in Franklin County looks like, quality of life, because, you know, things are a little different here. I mean, we do have a river, we do have a creek. I mean, a lot of communities don't. So that's just something for us to work out is we kind of, you know, it's like anything else. Something brand new, there's a lot of figuring out to do. You know, there's a lot of figuring out to do. But I think as we we have conversations and we be very open with our community partners, and we just work together to do cool things. Let's go ahead.
I know when we travel, we try to do something unique in that town. You know, team building. You get together after the game, after the tournament, whatever, you go to a facility, you go, you know, whatever you want to do, and that's a bonding for the team. So, you know, that's very important for the community also. And like I said, we participate in the same thing. So it's not just we're going to play softball, you know. They go bowling, they go to the movies, they do different things. So.
Judge, I'm wondering if we can have a little discussion just about, you know, we've effectively taken some of tourism's money currently that they operate on for the hopes and dreams that it's going to expand in the future and that they're going to get more money and we're going to generate more for the Sports Commission jointly. And we hope it works. Who knows what the future holds in America right now. But in terms of managing this facility, you know, there's two elements here that we really aren't talking about just yet, and maybe Amy can help with this a little bit, but I'm wanting to understand and help the public understand what revenues could potentially be generated from this facility, how much of that is going to be skimmed off, quite frankly, by the management company, right, and what kind of revenues are going to be coming back to pay the debt service of this structure. You know, when this park plan was initially developed, the cost of everything in the park was something comparable to what we're looking at for this one project now, and that's nationally, we can't help that. But in terms of, you know, how many years this is potentially going to take for the Sports Commission and through the Sports Management Company to pay off the $14.1 million project cost of this, and if that 14.1 is going to hold through, because we only have 4 or 3 bids out of several that I thought were due to be awarded by the 3rd of April, or they had to be rebid. If you could talk about that a little bit too. Just kind of trying to put it all out there for the public, because I've fielded all these questions and trying to make sure we answer everything.
So I think SFC, in our previous meeting, had talked a little bit about that. That's kind of outside of my area of expertise. I thought he said, was it 8 to 10 years
What are we talking about?
to pay off the 14 mil?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on how it's structured. I mean, we have Keith here too. I mean, I'll kind of take these conversations, and Amy, throw something at me if I'm misspeaking. You know, so basically we have $6 million of the money is coming from it's ARPA, but we put it into our general fund. So we have $6 million there. We've talked about potentially pulling 3 out of reserves, and then we would bond the other 2. That's not set in stone, but that's basically where we are now. So basically the debt that the Sports Commission would be paying on would only be about $2 million. And I think, I'm gonna look at Keith now, it's about $120,000 or give or take. So the estimated, you know, fee on the new hotels is first year $600,000. So I don't think there's any problem of paying that off. And typically bonds are structured for 20 years. I would say, I'm looking in the crowd, yes. So obviously they could pay it off sooner, I'm sure. And then I think the Sports Management Company, and again, they'll RFP this. I think it's roughly around $200,000 a year or something.
So it depends on who you.
It depends on who you use and how they're structured. They're all structured a little different. Some of them are cheaper, but then they take 10, 15, 20% off concessions, things like that. The model that I personally like is just, you know what you're paying up front. They do all your scholarships. They do all your, you know, selling of the banners, naming the fields. They do all that, and you keep 100% of the concessions. Because ultimately, the concessions and the gate are what pays for this whole thing. That's why we're doubling down on the kitchens. And originally, if you remember, we had food trucks. And when we started meeting with a couple of these management companies, they say, you don't want to do that. If you want this thing to basically pay for itself, you have to control the concessions. So that's kind of how we ended up with where we are right now.
And just a point there, Judge, that management company, that is a bid process.
Yes.
Which could be an existing entity, like someone that's met with us from E-Town, or it could be some
anybody.
locals decide to put together a business and run this and keep revenues local if
Absolutely.
we wanted to. So that's still a yet to be defined process, and their
Correct.
terms or the amount that they are going to eat off of this thing is subjective somewhat, but going to be controlled by us, I guess, a little bit, or the
And
sports commission.
we've talked to them like up in Indiana, and I feel like we kind of know how the sports management thing works. But you are correct. It will be the responsibility of the new sports commission to create the RFP, to put the RFP out, and to hire what firm they see fit. Squire Tanner.
I want to ask the question that I probably know the answer to, which I usually don't like to do, but maybe somebody doesn't. What happens to the fair, the Capitol Expo, other events that are out there, the golf course and the Carter
Because
House,
you're going to get me in
etc.?
trouble, because that's not on the agenda, no, I'm just joking. Nothing's going to happen with the fair, that's all good. And actually, I've talked to Mr. Godell a little bit. I know Squire Sebastian has talked a lot about like the truck pull area, because it's too low and it never got filled in, things like that. So there's an opportunity. One of the deducts on here that we met with Mr. Codell and Wes about was keeping the spoils on site. We have more parking to build out back that we're working with the school system to make sure we have enough parking. But the fair's not going to be affected.
Long term, not just short term, long.
Correct. Yeah, no, we don't want our fair going anywhere, absolutely. And then we also have a lot, and Charlie could speak on this if he needs to, the only soccer that really we're doing at Lakeview Park anymore is like the YMCA youth soccer, and that's in that upper field, so this has no bearing on that whatsoever with what we're doing on this Phase 1 project. Does that kind of, Squire Tanner, does that answer?
Well, yeah, oh, yes, that's what I understood all the time, but I've actually never heard anybody say that the new Capitol Expo is going to be there. I don't know how that's going to work out, but anyway, that's where they're going this next year, I believe.
They canceled. They canceled.
Yeah, they backed up.
Oh, did they?
They couldn't work it out, so.
So I'm keeping my stuff right up to date, ain't I? But anyway.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
Y'all didn't cancel the fair, did you? Okay.
No, and it's nothing we did. They just, because of timing, they couldn't, I think, get some things together.
Oh, that's fine.
This court was gracious enough to vote that we would be, happy to have them, but their board decided they did not have enough time to pull off a successful expo. Is my understanding.
I also understand from what I saw in the plans, the golf course is obviously held whole and is completely left just like it is, maybe even park, I don't know, I don't want to get into everything, but it looked like it was complete. I know that Mr. Lewis has asked for some better lighting and et cetera to go out there so you can drive golf balls all night.
Yeah, no, and that golf course has been a jewel for us. We actually have a meeting today with Charlie. We've talked about lights. We've talked about a bunch of different things out there, new irrigation system, things like that. So, and actually Randy could speak on a little bit, not to get off subject, but in the master plan, we also have that 100,000 square foot indoor facility. And I think that's important that people realize that. I think that should be a goal of ours, because we have no indoor facilities in Franklin or Franklin County. So as we're dealing with the youth and this opioid problem, 5 months out of the year, they have nowhere to go and nowhere to play. So I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. But if and when that could happen, they have designed schematically like heated tees, like a 2-level golf tees. Special meeting. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I was just kind of rambling on there.
It says Lakeview Park Project.
Well, it may be
Lakeview Park
irrelevant,
Project.
really.
Anything's relatable in my mind to that project.
Well,
In my mind.
All right, stay focused. All right, what other questions do we have?
Well, Judge, since that was brought up, I want to walk through that a little bit about how the park's going to operate. We're not changing entrances. The master plan had a separate entrance being built in, which I'm concerned is going to need to be completed for this to operate and not impact the recreational users of the park. If we have how is a gate going to work with a fee for coming into this facility and not to be applied to those playing golf or just taking their dog out?
So typically the way we've seen the gates work, and Randy, I'm sorry, I'm just talking happy today.
Just wanting all these questions.
Typically the
the
gate
public have,
is
right?
more at the facility, as you're coming into the actual complex. It's not at the road coming into it. So typically that's what we have seen going to these other sports complexes. We did talk to transportation, because somewhere along the way they said that we could potentially need to do some improvements on Stedmantown and maybe a turning lane, but that would only be required if we were able to build that indoor facility, because it would be so big. Either that, or honestly, that new school is probably gonna trigger, those things there. So, Randy, you wanna speak on that? I think really that second entrance was needed if the whole thing got built out, right?
Yes. When we were in the master planning process, with all of the things that we heard and the wants and the needs of the community, once we got all the puzzle pieces in there, it was very clear that there needed to be an additional entrance. So I think to your point, if the indoor facility is built or the amphitheater is constructed, that's when, you know, it's gonna kind of push you over the top.
It would trigger that need.
Yeah.
Squire Harrod.
90% of the gate on the tournaments that I've been to are done online. You have your tickets, you'll have a QR code, they send to your phone. You show that when you go through the gate, they know you paid.
Yeah.
So it's something that, if you don't have the access to the internet there, when you come through, they can scan it and take a card right there as you come through. So if it's someone that's going just to use the park, you know, they do what they want to do. But as far as the gate and the money's controlled, it's all done online, and it's taken care of before you get there.
A lot of that's driven by the management company.
Right, right.
Wes, since you're with us,
Yes, sir.
so Wes Davis is with Codell Construction. Could you just briefly maybe talk about, so basically we have 3 bid packages in front of us. I know there was a bid package number 1 that was asphalt, but we thought at this time, because of what was going on there, in order to keep this in somewhat of a budget deal, we decided to, you know, potentially do that on our own as this project happens. So can you talk a little bit about what's included in bid package 2, bid package 3, and bid package 4, please?
Sure. So bid package 2 is your general trades bid package, and it encompasses basically all of your dirt work, all of your turf fields, the drainage that's beneath the concrete, the netting for the backstops, the fencing, the dugouts, the pre-manufactured buildings, the kitchen equipment. Basically, the easy way to put this is bid packages 3 and 4 are your plumbing, HVAC, and then bid package 4 is your electric. So you've got your MEP packages, and then you have the general trades package. So it encompasses everything else that's not in a plumbing, HVAC, or electrical package. We tried to simplify it for bidding purposes to get more participation, which we had multiple bidders for that package, so it worked the way we put it together. It brought people in, people were interested in the job, and it's just at the road department, it was a little different. We had 10 or 11 bid packages. We kind of separated some of this stuff out, but we thought for this particular, the reason being is, and Randy can attest to this, you have the dirt work, the concrete work, and the turf work are all intertwined when you build these fields. You really don't want separate contractors coming in after someone else finishes. This puts everything in that one package to where it's a turnkey deal. When they get the grading done, they know they have to move to the drainage, then they're moving on to the turf. So it just made everything kind of bundled up into those 3 packages.
All right, Wes, let you know, Mr. Codell's come to the podium, hold tight.
So, I want to say this to you, had good competition on, 2 of the 3 packages, the civil, the dirt, the, concrete, turf, we had like 5 bidders. Likewise on the electrical, mechanical plumbing, time bidding, we only got the 1 bid. It's becoming kind of a common theme in today's market in that we are struggling desperately for mechanical and electrical bids. Hence the need for more vocational programs, but it's just kind of the market. We would have liked to have seen more, but really had to beat the bushes. So the bulk of the work, excellent competition, especially in today's market, as saturated as it is. Struggled a bit on the plumbing mechanical side, which was not a huge package. So anyway, good competition, which leads in better pricing.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody have any questions for Jim since he's at the podium? I'll let you off easy tonight, huh?
Actually, Judge,
Go ahead, Squire. No, go ahead. Hold on. Easy.
this last page, the Phase 1 value engineering, there's a lot of deductions, let's say, of items that were within the plan or not necessarily downgrades, but alternatives. Can Mr. Codell or anyone else kind of walk us through?
I can answer to that, Squire Wisman. So what our goal was, and this happens a lot on a lot of projects. When you bid a job, it may be over budget, or owners may want to just cut the job down even if it was in budget. So we go through a process called value engineering. And on this job, it was a little tricky because Randy's team couldn't do a lot with this without cutting scope on the job. So they could have cut, a couple ball fields out and easily got the number down in the overall bid. But what we wanted to do was try to keep, and the judge made this very clear, he's got a vision of what this project needs to look like and what it needs to operate like, and that's keeping it how it was designed. So our goal was to cut items out of the job and still give you every aspect, every scope item that you asked for. But for instance, one of the items on that list is turf. We saved, let's see, $230,000, I think, roughly on turf. And it's the same, this turf is as good as is on a college field. This is Sprint Turf. We've worked with them a lot over the years. So turf, 2-inch trees, we had voluntary deducts from subs, $340,000. That's a big number.
So your turf, you just changed manufacturers, correct?
Yeah, a lot of these, we changed manufacturers. The goal was to not change the scope. If we started changing the scope, yes, we could have cut a big chunk of money out, but we're still giving you the end result will be the same thing that was designed in the beginning of the project and that's in the master plan. It just may be, a different product than what was specified.
Or different methods, to Judge's point, leaving the material on site. This saved us some money too.
Yeah, disposal of spools, it wasn't a big item, $15,000, but that item also led into some of these other items. Your trees, going with 2-inch trees instead of the 3-inch trees that were specified, the drainage under the field, they ran calculations and we're like, hey, we can build this, still keep it to function the same way, just a smaller diameter pipe underneath the turf. Nobody will know the difference, it'll still function exactly how it would. So the engineers did all their calculations, said, yes, that's absolutely acceptable. The ROMTech building deduction was a big one. And that's honestly because the judge, Jack, and I got together on this and we looked at the option of maybe just building these buildings without having those people included and just going out there and building a replica of it. So they caught wind of this and said, hey, we still want to keep this job. They cut $220,000 out of their bid just to make it happen. So that's a big number. Then we have the painting and the demo that we've taken off here. The aluminum feeder is a big item, and it'll still function the same way. It just has aluminum wire coming in from your secondary instead of copper. And the price of copper is so high, it saved $20,000 off the bat.
Judge, could you
This
specifically?
these items are, it was about $1.4 million that we cut right off the top of the job. Now that's only 11 items, but these 11 items took a while to, once we presented them as options, we we had to make sure Randy's design team was good with them and that we could still function how the property was supposed to function. So it was a process to get to this point.
Could you speak specifically, I just want to make sure that we state here that the change in turf and the subgrading specifically was more my concerns, that we're not opting for an inferior option that's going to have to be replaced faster and cost us more in the long run. I just wanted you all to state, that we're effectively getting the same product and the only change was the manufacturer. Could you speak to that?
Just manufacturing change on the turf. The people doing the turf, or the rep for the turf is out of Lexington, I know, former UK player. You can call him at nighttime, he'll be there the next day. So, but to your point, the warranty's still the same, and we got somebody that we know that can call on the callbacks, which is important.
Yes.
And then on the pipe, Squire, I remember in the conversation, I think they expect like 12-inch pipe, and when, it is 10 now, I think, yeah. So it changed it from one to another, and there was a big, pretty good difference there of how it was built, but it was still plenty to handle, the heavy rains that we get now, so, yeah.
Yes, we had the engineers run all their calculations to make sure that it was still drained properly and just how it was designed with the 12-inch pipe. So it'll absolutely function the same way.
Several hours were put in on the value engineering. It was thought out well. The Judge and Jack and Wes and I sat down with Randy and his team's input. They were thought, I don't suspect any of those are going to come back to haunt you at all.
Yeah. And I do want to commend Jim Codell, because he did work with us too on our agreement, so it definitely is noticed, so we appreciate that. All right, any other questions?
Some more then, I guess. I'd like to, as part of the bid package here, we have the 4 alternatives and what those look like. If we're going to build something, I'm always, let's build it to the best standard we possibly can, and we're going to get the most longevity. At the same time, you've mentioned how we pay for that. I'm only comfortable with spending the $3 million that we have in bonding capacity currently up front and letting the debt service be carried by the Sports Commission and the Sports Management Company to pay for the rest. That's where my comfort level lies. But I'm wondering, if there's a 10-year payoff, what is the difference in a 20-year payoff, let's say, by the Sports Commission, and going ahead and doing the alternatives so that this complex is productive as possible, let's say, cutting some of those elements at times from the scope of work we know are difficult to come back to and get done later on. And I'm just being devil's advocate here for that. Because
That's fine, that's why we're here. Amy, do you want to speak, or Keith speak? He's kind of talking bond language a little bit, like a 10 years compared to a 20-year. Do you have any thoughts on that, Keith? I mean, I thought it's usually a 20 or 30-year on bonds, correct?
I mean, there's all kinds of options, right, as we work through to try to optimize the financing plan.
Yeah.
And so as you look at, it's really cash flow that we're trying to back into, right, operationally and so forth, but generally speaking, the longer.
Oh, you might come up.
Sorry. Excuse me. Sorry. Generally speaking, right, the longer that you finance something for, right, the higher the overall cost of capital is, and that's generally true in today's current market environment.
Right.
So those are kind of the pros and cons. I don't know if I addressed the question, but.
Yeah. So this court is a discussion, I guess. I guess we need to talk about, and I know Amy kind of wants to do things a certain way, but what are our thoughts as a court as we move forward? If this does move forward, I mean, or do we want the Sports Commission to carry most of the burden, or are you all leaning towards kind of what I think Amy and I talked about?
We had put the money back for this reason.
I'm sorry?
We had put the money back for this reason, to not have to come up with the whole 14 million or 12 million. So, if we're going in and only going to have to bond the 3 and then borrow the other 2, however it works out, I can't see going 10 years longer and paying interest if we've got the money up front.
And that's something I think we can work out as we move forward. Yeah, because ultimately what will happen if this does, bless you, if this does go through, then Amy and Keith will probably get back together and figure out what they think is the best thing for Franklin County to, right?
Yeah, we can work through all those
Yeah.
options, and
Yeah.
there's a process for any financing before that would occur, right?
Yeah.
We'd be back here for that.
Well, while we have Keith here,
And Keith is with Compass, by the way, for anybody watching, he helps us with our bonding, so that's who this is with us here. Go ahead, Summit.
just while we have him, I sort of asked 4 questions there that were related to different people, I suppose. But Keith, could you give us a picture of, we took out a $10 million bond. This court, to my memory, only set the 3 that was left over aside to go to any kind of sporting activity. We've never made a decision. Maybe committees discussed it, but we've never made a decision to put any of our reserves to this project specifically. That's the conversation we're having now. But within the ethers of bonding capacity right now, what's our bonding abilities? Kind of what are the current rates, and what the difference would there be if we bonded $2.5 million versus $10 million for this project? Could you speak to some of those elements?
I can try to, from memory. I have some numbers with me, but probably not everything that you're looking for at the moment. But the county is in a pretty strong position financially in terms of the overall financial strength to fund this project. I think it exists. Obviously, it's a wide range of $2 million to $14 million, changes the math equation quite dramatically. From an interest rate perspective, it's been a little bit choppy, to be frank, with a lot of the things going on in the world, but rates have kind of, I'd say, been fairly stable. Looking out 20, 25 years, you're probably somewhere around 4.25%, 4.5%. You go a little bit shorter, you don't really get as much relief in terms of lower rate, given what the yield curve is. It was inverted and it's a little bit flatter now. You do save on interest costs by paying your debt off early, most certainly, and so I think it needs to be developing an optimal plan of finance from this project's perspective is, trying to be conservative with the debt, and given, kind of that range, at a $2 million level, kind of where we are today, that's very conservative and very financially affordable from the county's perspective, even knowing that, you're having the discussion about the operational side and the hotel tax and so forth, being able to sustain that.
And I do want to say I appreciate Keith and his firm, all the work they've done with us, so far. But I guess where I am on the whole thing is, I think everybody in this room, not going to assume for everybody, but we have the best treasurer in the state, and so for me, when we have an employee in teams like we do here in county government, really throughout the whole thing, it's what they do. So, for me, I meet with Amy and I say, what's our best option? And then Amy meets with Keith, and then I think we all talk about it. But I think for me, I'm not a huge financial guru. I mean, obviously, I know what we're doing, but I think when it comes to, she hasn't steered us wrong at all. Yes, it is for us to oversee, but I do say that our treasurer treats our money like it's her own, and I think that is very, very hard to come by. So that's kind of where I am on it. Squire,
Keith, could you just speak to, if my preference would be to take the $3 million that we already have, to bond the rest. Hopefully the sports commission and whoever we contract with does so well that this thing is so productive that it can pay itself off within 8 years, 10 years, whatever. In my mind, at that point, it makes no difference minimally, in some ways, interest rates of bonding the rest of it versus cash out. That, and personally, the cash that we have, I'll say I'm concerned that we need to hold cash in reserves for the climate that we're seeing. Unrelated, but Meals on Wheels was cut yesterday nationally. We have a duty to sustain programs that we're somewhat unsure about what the future is going to look like. And we've talked about that in this court, and that's out of probably context of the scope here. But with that in mind, though, I'm thinking our entity needs to retain cash, and as things progress, we can pay off debt. So the long question here is, if we were to take an $8.5, $9 million bond out instead of two and a half, what kind of penalties will we have paying 3 years up front ahead of time? Could we do that? You're saying an interest rate of 4.25% to 4.5% sort of standard right now, but do you see wild fluctuations coming up with that? Would we be set at that amount if we issued the bond? And any other external sort of elements, I suppose, that are impacting that kind of bonding capacity right now? We know we're in a pretty strong position to be able to do that. In my mind, that's the less risky avenue to fund this project, and the only way I'd be frankly for moving forward with the funding this project, given some of the other concerns that we have as a community. So not all that's related to you, but those couple things.
No, there's a lot of it in there that hopefully I can answer, and forgive me if I don't recall all of your questions, because there's a lot packed in there. Generally, I guess just to maybe back up, the process of issuing debt is a competitive bid process, and there's certain laws that we have to follow, including the court approving that, Department of Local Government review, and so forth. So there's a process. So when we talk about cash flows today, we're just estimating it based on where we see the current market, based on the credit strength of Franklin County. So nothing is locked in until the bonds are actually sold. And, this is just like we did the last time. For the last project, we came and presented kind of what the estimates were and so forth. So up until that point, it's just an estimate. But, in terms of structuring the bond deal, that's what I talk about working with Amy and the team here in terms of optimization, right? Is trying to understand the goals and objectives and then trying to structure it in the way that we can achieve the lowest cost of capital for the county. So that's the process. When you look at structural options, and some of the ones that you laid out really are sizing options, right? Borrow more debt or use more cash, right? And that is a subjective process, but we've kind of had a lot of discussion about that, the pros and cons of that, and ultimately, that's a decision that you all get to make that impacts what that cash flow looks like. So it certainly puts more stress potentially if you borrow more, but you're correct, and we support the philosophy of maintaining adequate reserves, and so that's a little bit of a subjective juggling act, but you don't get the full flexibility of long-term lower fixed rates and ultimate prepayment flexibility. So the debt won't work where, you would ultimately, the general prepayment provisions of a bond issue is somewhere around 8 to 10 years, right? So if you went out with a bigger bond issue and did a 20-year term, you were gonna have some market risk in trying to pay that debt off early. Now, you can structure the debt to accelerate the payment and still go on a 20-year term, meaning like if you think if the hotel tax, and we know if we had a crystal ball and can say what everything was going to look like, we could structure it wrapped around the income of the commission. Because we don't know that, right? We take a conservative approach and try to keep it within the means, but that's kind of an evolving process that we're still working towards. So you would lose some flexibility potentially. We wouldn't necessarily recommend accelerating the payback on it, but after the 8 to 10 year mark, right, surplus cash could go to reduce that debt early. So I don't know if that addresses your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Judge.
Go ahead, Squire Sebastian.
Thank you, Judge. Keith, could you talk to us a little bit about also after a certain period, if we want to refinance the bonds or any bonds, we absolutely can do that after a 10-year period. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Correct. So it works similarly to the we call it the call option, meaning you as the issuer of the debt have the option to call in the bonds early. That's at that 7 to 10 year mark. In terms of refinancing or just paying debt down early, that's kind of what triggers that. Before that period of time, you still have the ability to take cash and pay it down, but we call that defeasance, meaning you have to invest it to that redemption date. So that's why I'm saying you have potentially significant market penalty in doing that, and you're not really saving interest earnings until after that period of time. So, you have that flexibility. Same thing on the refinancing. It used to be before the government changed the rules that you could do what we called an advanced refunding, meaning we could issue bonds, say 3 to 4 years ahead of that call date at a much lower rate, invest it, and lock in savings. The government will no longer let you do that, so you would be subject to what taxable rates look like. And this is what we did for the AOC project. If you remember that, we did a taxable advanced refunding and locked those savings. It worked out. We didn't know what the market was going to do, but it worked out pretty well. So you would have similar options here. But again, we need to understand really the primary financing goals and then structure the deal conservatively on the front end to give you cash flow cushion, still managing, your reserves as a whole, right, to make it work that way.
Thank you.
Glad you're here, Keith. There's a lot of information. You
You
lost me
I'm
about
great
halfway,
at
but
dinner
you know
parties.
what? That's why you do what you do. Yeah, it's kind of like, poof, it's gone. Squire Tanner.
I ask stupid questions about money because I obviously am a bad manager myself, but personally, a question. Arbitrage in money is now illegal, is that correct? Is that what I heard you say?
Well, what I was saying is you can no longer do an advanced tax exempt refinancing to save money. Arbitrage rules are, it's been generally, again, you can generally not make arbitrage by issuing tax exempt debt. There's several exceptions to that, and we're in this crazy interest rate environment. But yeah, generally speaking, the government says if you borrow at a lower tax exempt and you invest those monies, you need to rebate back the difference. Yeah, but never, I've been doing this a long time, it never really, rates have been low, we've never had that situation until
Well, it's
recently.
going back the other way now, where it
Yeah.
could be interesting, maybe. I'm not a finance, I worked for Keiko when they arbitraged a ton of money.
Yeah, they got the special exemption. Yeah, that worked out really well.
They did good then.
You're speaking to something I'm thinking, we've done so well with our investments and the income that's being generated off those, that value could exceed potential interest rate
Good.
that we would get through bonding.
Well, that's a different discussion,
Completely,
but the bond money is separate from your general fund money. So when I'm addressing the question, it's your bond fund money that we're talking about.
Perfect. Jim, can I ask you a question? So I know we met in your office to really kind of try to hone this thing down to where we thought, we could get started, let's be honest. The alternates that Squire Wisman's talking about, so the way timeline would go, let's just say if we vote on what's in front of us with no alternates, it's gonna take a little bit for you all to get set up, contractors scheduled, months and months. Would there still be time, let's say July 1, the Sports Commission gets a firm hired that starts to work on trying to raise money, for fields and things like that. Would there still be time to add alternates at that point?
What I'm thinking we do, you with me, Wes?
I'm here, and I'll hear what you say first, but I do
Let me,
You might put your mute on.
I
Wes.
might,
Sounds like
yeah, you
something
might
going
want
on.
to put your mute on. So here would be my thought on that,
That's why I
Judge,
asked.
is if the court decides to move forward with these numbers, we will go ahead and request that they hold the alternate pricing that is not being accepted today.
Okay, so you'd go to the
And
contractor.
we'll ask them to hold it. Typically, if we show some good faith on approving now that they've been extended, I think we could probably get pricing extended on those alternates till, say, August 1.
Okay.
So we could, if the court wants to move forward, we say, here's your notice to proceed pending you hold your alternate prices till August 1, or you give us a date you need.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Just related to that, if I could we just go through a little discussion of what those alternates are? There's some fairly broad pricing differences, but it would seem that one company potentially would exceed the rest if they were awarded all of them, all four alternates, instead of piecemealing different companies with those, and if there's some benefit to having some negotiation with them. I think I'm just sort of wondering and wanting to put out in the public sort of what those would entail and how critical you all think those are that have been in the design process to the operations and the functioning of this thing. Obviously, you mentioned the shade sails and structures could be something that could be sponsored, but probably not any of the rest of those elements. But
Randy, I want to have you help us with this one because you were with us as we kind of went through this part of the bid and everything. I mean, do you think if the court approved this project starting today without these alternates that it's going to hurt us in a way that we should not proceed or anything? I mean, I know it'd be nice to have, the batting cages and a couple, the picnic structures and a couple things.
could he
like
just describe what they are so it's verbally out here for the public to?
Go ahead, Jim.
Help me here, Wes. Are we, like on this first one, these four alternates I'm looking at, are they the ones we're talking about first?
Yes.
And we're not accepting any of the, we're not proposing that any of those are being accepted right now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I think I can take it from here.
All right.
So, alternates, you kind of need to do your site work for 1, 2, and 4, right, Wes? Or can we hold off on that?
Yes, and foundational for like anchoring things down. I mean, they can be held off, but yes, at some point, they'll have to incorporate with your site work and concrete work.
Okay, could we break out portions of that site, of the site portions that we kind of need to go ahead with on 1, 2, and 4?
I think we can.
Yeah.
I mean, especially, you nailed it when you said if the subs know the project is moving, then we have a little leverage with them. I also think there's an opportunity to maybe save a little money on the alternates, which Squire Wishman, I think, one of your points. I mean, we did not value engineer those items because they weren't even on the table, so, it's something else we could do.
So what I would possibly throw out to the court to consider is maybe up to $100,000 worth of the alternates being accepted to get site work and preliminary work done for those four alternates that would be on the table. Are those the only four, Wes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the first one is the batting cages. The second one is the shelters. Which shelters are those, Wes?
It's like your
The picnic shelters, I believe.
It's the picnic shelters. I think there's 2 of them, correct? Well, there's more than that, but they're equaled out on each field, each set of fields. You got 4 fields and 3 fields. He's kind of spaced them out through there. I believe the packet that Kim sent me and the magistrates have will show those shelters kind of shaded in.
I mean, you're not talking about a ton of site work for any of those, are you, Wes?
No, the only ones really are the canopies and the batting cages that will affect other scopes of work. These other items are more finished, aesthetic, last part of the project project type item.
Yeah, my thought would be, let's just go back to Plan A, Judge, and we'll try to extend their pricing. I think we can handle what little bit of site work. If we need to do something, we can come back at a court meeting between now and then. So the third one would be your shade structures. And the fourth one, that's the one that I would think you're gonna want to start. It was while you're doing concrete work, those seat walls. But still, if we know something later in the summertime, I think we'll get that figured out.
Jim, could you speak to those were the two that I was concerned about the most. The shade structures, from my memory, were inclusive of the things that covered the spectator stadium seating, that we're gonna want for people to not be sitting in the sun and, to be able to stay and enjoy their time, and then those seat walls as an integral element. Those were the two that I was more concerned about being.
Yeah, you wanna expand on those a little bit for them, Wes?
So the shade structures are not necessarily just around the field. They are placed to where you can still watch the games, but Randy, they're spread out for just people that, maybe have gotten their food and want to sit around in between the fields and concession stands. I mean, they're kind of spaced throughout the project. I was trying to find a picture of it here.
Hey, Wes.
But they're pretty good sized structures that will add, shade to the job. Now the seat walls, they're not in as many spots as the structures are. There's only a few spots of seat walls.
Hey, Wes, I do think that is not something we looked at because they were alternates, but I think it would be, we've talked about shade from the get-go, but I think it would be good to go back and do value engineering on those. I think that would be a very worthy process. I think, looking at different manufacturers, different types, things like that.
Sure.
And I think that, and then we could always circle back on that part of it. So we could just bring the alternates back up after it's value engineered, but I think I would definitely like to look at that too.
Judge, it's just been said, by you and by everyone that the bids we have to move, or the bids are, dead in 2 days. So
Correct.
It would just seem to be common sense that we consider those alternates and what the benefit is of delaying them or looking at them now. So,
but are you in agreement that Mr. Codell could go back to them and say, hey?
He's said what I was trying to get out of everybody. Yeah,
Perfect.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Alrighty, any other questions before we go to the vote?
Can I just
Bardakis.
say something?
Absolutely.
And I trust all these financial people. They would not want to trust me with this for sure. So I'm just assuming that they're doing a great job because Amy always does a great job. But I do want to say, because this is now in my district, and so I have struggled with this a lot, which is, and I have talked to many, many, many people in the last month. I have just made it my job to talk to as many people as I can so that I get a good understanding of what people want, because this is for them. This isn't for us. I'm not going to be out there playing softball. I probably will be watching it, but I'm not going to be playing it. And I just want to say that the two big things for me was that taxpayers aren't paying, we're not upping people's taxes to pay for this. And I appreciate that you guys have worked so hard to make sure that that doesn't happen. I really appreciate that. And the second thing is to make sure that tourism is whole for at least 2 years, because I feel like we kind of pulled the rug out from under them, not
Absolutely.
on purpose, but it is what it is. And I feel like we're on good footing there. So I just want to thank the court, first of all, for doing all of that work, because I know I've been a little bit of a pain about it. I get it. But I feel like it's my job. And I will say that while, everybody in town is not happy, most people that I talk to are very happy. And they're excited about this, and they feel like we deserve this. And I know the rest of the world is going crazy. and we're all a little bit stressed out about it, but we don't have any control over that. We have control over this. And I feel like we have to take a chance, and if we don't do it now, it's just going to get more expensive. So mostly I just wanted to thank all of you for doing all the hard work and, dealing with me being a pain. But really thinking this through, and I really appreciate Amy for talking me through this, because it's a lot. It's a lot of money. But I think that, I hope that in the end, it will be a really good thing for this community. So thank you, guys.
I appreciate the words, but don't look at yourself as a pain. I look at you as a good magistrate, because you're asking questions and you're listening to all sides. And I think that's a very important thing. So I appreciate our conversations together. And think about this. The park was bought in 1991. Everyone thought Bob Arnold was crazy, honestly. Great guy, but he had a vision. And think about this, it's been 34 years, and here we are, hopefully getting ready to do the biggest thing in Franklin County that's happened in decades, truly. Any other comments before we move to voting? Swear with me.
I just feel like we've got a kind of a missing element here that I tried to get to about how we're funding each of these awards. I've said my preference. At what point do we make that decision? I know Parks Committee and Finance Committee and everyone's had conversations, but this court has not made that decision. So I feel like we need to define how we're moving forward with this, and the only way that I can take this palatable as a project to move forward is what I've specified, because we have a lot of unknowns out there, and we have a lot of projects and needs in this community that still haven't been fully defined, that I'm just a little uncomfortable in committing so much of our reserves that we are making some significant money on, by the way, right now too, right? To this project, and there's all the other needs and desires of the community. I'm not even going to get into the pool discussion, which should have been primary, but we're here where we are. So no, Lakeview Park projects it should have had a pool in it. But can we define, what's the preference of the court? I suppose is we need to define how we're moving forward, how we're paying for this. Or is that a later?
You want to bond all the money?
Not necessarily.
I'm asking.
Well, we've already set aside the 3, which is bonded. So.
And you want to bond the rest?
In my mind, that has potentially a lot of benefit. It may come at cost to this entity that we create, but it frees up money to explore a lot of other projects that this community wants. And the one that's hanging out of the room, I've already said, we haven't designed and we have no idea what kind of cost that's going to look like for this community, right? So
bonding all of it handcuffs the sports commission. So if that's the route you're with, I'm totally against that.
I agree.
That's where I'm at.
too.
Squire Tanner.
When, today, we're going to vote on these bids and these contracts, whether we accept them or not. We're not voting on a financial package today, are we? Is that yes or no?
I would say no. Amy?
No, we're just voting on the contract, or
Yes.
to accept these bids or not to accept these
Yeah.
bids.
And honestly,
So this argument, this discussion could take place later, or am I wrong? If I am, just tell me.
they go hand in hand, right? We can't award a package without saying how we're going to pay for the thing or where it's going to come from.
Well, we are already discussing that now, whether sell bonds or not sell bonds. Are we gonna, is that gonna,
I'm asking
was that on the table or not?
yeah.
We have the
like he
bonding
said earlier,
director
all
here.
the finances on the table. I told you, I think, what our treasurer and myself spoke about. So, that's, she hasn't gotten into the weeds, and I do want to apologize to her because from a timing standpoint, this is hitting at a terrible time. She's in the middle of budget, and she's been very, very working hard on our budget. So it just so happens this is thrown on her lap right now. So I'm going to say we're not going to have an answer tonight. Obviously, we have the funds, regardless of which way we go.
I'm not arguing that
Yeah,
point at all. We
it
have the
seems
funds,
like we
we
have
have to
an
decide
A
how
and
we're
B
gonna do
right
it.
now, which we can financially do both A and B.
So can you clarify what was talked about? Exactly, so.
Yeah, so what was talked about was, we have the 6 that was converted into our general fund. We have 3 left over roughly from our capital improvement down at the road department from that bond that we already have existing. So that gets us to 9. We talked about 2 to 3 out of reserves, and then bonding the other, 1 to 2, basically is what we had talked about.
That's what I
between
understood.
us. Yeah, I mean, we have that, and that still varies because of because ultimately, I think the thought is we don't want to borrow a bunch of money and pay a bunch of interest when we have good money sitting there. And I know we need, and this is a sweet spot, we've talked about this for years as far as how much to keep in reserves. Is it 2 months operating expenses, 3 months operating expense? That's a moving target. I mean, the great thing, like Keith said when he stood up here, is we are in very, very good financial standings. So, I mean, our bonding capacity and everything. So that just comes down to a mathematical thing as far as what the professionals think we should do. Squire Dunkus.
I'm just wondering if Amy has and I don't want to put you on the spot, so if you don't feel like doing this, that's cool. But I have heard her talk about this in the Finance Committee a little bit, and I'm wondering if she can explain to us which one makes more sense to her.
And I don't get too far in the weeds, because I do think that's a different vote as far as, what road we go down. And again, Amy.
You cannot divide these things up and act like we can award something without having a conversation about how we pay for it.
I'm fine to keep having conversations, but I don't think
I'm saying,
okay.
let's just not play games here.
I'm
Let's
not
talk
playing
about how we're
games.
gonna
I'm not playing
pay for
games. I've
things.
told you what we've talked about. If we want to vote on it right here, we can. I'm fine with that.
And Squire Wisman, I agree. If you have a project this large, you have to know where your money's coming from.
And I have to say, Amy, while we're here, we have to talk about the future expense too. That changed tonight from what I heard before. The last meeting we had, I thought we were going to have a $10 million obligation at 10 years. It looks more like that's a $2 million obligation, so that's a little easier to digest and maybe not part of the bigger conversation that I was so worried about, if this facility was going to cost us $10 million every 10 years. That's future obligations of this court that, is a different conversation, so just wanted to
Go ahead,
say
Amy.
that too.
But I'm in agreement with Squire Blackburn. We have money in reserves that this court has been fiscally responsible over the years in building. And to be able to use it for a project. And yes, right now it is earning wonderful dividends for us, but it is meant to be used for a project. And so my recommendation would be, and of course, Keith and I have had many meetings, and we will continue to do that, but is to use some of that reserves and then bond. In addition, you've already bonded some money, that's important to remember that, and bond the remainder. You all know that I have cautioned you, and I will continue to do that. I've had many conversations with many of you, and so you know my hesitation on this project, but that would be the route if you choose to move forward with this, is use some of that reserves. Let's find that happy spot and then bond the remainder. I would not, and I don't know who said this earlier, but I agree. This bond, we want to have a good agreement with the new Sports Tourism Commission to handle that bond payment. It has to be a good agreement because that's our bond. And if they can't do it, we will do it. So we want to make sure we have a good agreement there that will hold so that they pay that on our behalf. But it also needs to, if it's a large amount, they're not going to be able to handle it these first few years. So, but I've worked with Keith too. We can establish that so that that bond payment, those first few years, can be a little bit lower. So we have a lot of ways we can do this to make it work.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks.
All righty. Is the court ready to go?
Before we vote, I want to make sure I know what I'm voting on.
Go ahead, Squire Tanner.
Which, we're voting on the proposals here in our package 2, 3, and 4. Is that
Correct.
But the way we're going to, if it passes, the way we're going to finance in is not on the table. It's just, this is what we're going to do, conversation.
Yes.
Should it be in black and white?
Will we, Max, we come back and vote on financing, or? I think they need some time to get some things, yeah, get some things together.
to come up with some potential proposals to find the sweet spot of where, you know, and then they would bring that issue to the court would vote on that issue. If I'm understanding the conversation that's been had here is how to pay, I guess you would say, how that bonding as opposed to reserves, as opposed to all those things will kind of work hand in hand. Several proposals maybe come up with in the court.
Yes.
We'll make a decision on what they believe, you all believe is the sweet spot of where you all want to be and feel comfortable with as far as how much reserves to use and how much bond to use. If I'm understanding the conversation.
Correct. And the use of your cash, you're well familiar how that process works. For the financing piece, it'll come in the form of a bond ordinance that would have to have a reading and an adoption before any borrowing can occur. That's correct.
Keith, thank you. Barr Wisman.
If these bids are awarded, which looks like it's going to happen, at what point are we obligated for financial expenditures, and how much are those going to look like before that bonding capacity takes place?
Well, in theory, I mean, it's a 16-month project, so we still have really all this cash to get going. And I know we have a couple other things going on in the community, so the thought would be to look at all those projects together. Jim, go ahead since you jumped up.
Also, guys, I'm working with Kim and Amy on putting a draw schedule together. We should have that to you end of the week. Teresa's been working through that in our office, so we'll have that to you, and it'll kind of break out on a month-to-month basis of what the court would be approving based upon this size project in the 16-month time period.
So that plus you're looking at contracts and mobilization 30 days, work 30 days, invoice 30 days to pay. So you're 90 days out.
Yep.
For the first round of
June, probably, yes, before first payouts are even in our hands.
And with 1st of June pay-apps in hands, 1st of July payment due.
And I would say, not speaking for Amy, but I know she wants to get this budget done. She has to send it to the DOG. It will come back. So I would say it would be the next thing that she would work on once that is complete and approved. Squire Tanner.
I want to explain my, not concern particularly as the question is, if this passes, and apparently I think it is, so I just want to make sure we're all clear on how the structure is going to be paid for. I mean, and if it's like the conversation went, that's fine with me. I just want to make sure we all know that's the way it is. And it's hard for me to think, well, okay, I'm going to buy a car, but I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it yet.
Go ahead, Amy.
So my recommendation is to draw down the existing bond already, and I'm estimating that to be around 2.5 million that's available.
Okay.
Once we have that road project completed, we'll know exactly how much money's there.
Very close.
So that's where we would start, and because that's what that bond money was for.
Yeah.
But I guess I probably do need court direction on the money that we obligated for government services and withdrew from ARPA to put into the capital project. It was my understanding that that was for the park project as well, but I need to make sure that that's the court's understanding.
That's not been an
Or
agreement
direction.
by the court yet. That has not ever been decided. That's been a proposal, and that's what I'm saying. We need to define, if you all majority rules, right, but we need to say that, or state that finally and vote on it.
Can we put that in a resolution, vote on it today?
It's not on
With this being a special,
special.
we can't amend our
No,
agenda
okay,
to do that.
that's fair enough, that's fair enough.
So we could bring that
Yeah,
possibly
maybe on
before the
next
next
meeting.
court?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask Judge Amy, at an $11 million over 16 months, that's $750,000, $800,000. If it's an equal payment, you know, who knows? I'm not getting the answers that I'm hoping for here. If there's an expectation for mobilization and build out, that we're expected to have a $5 million upfront contribution for materials and labor, and then the rest of the project's labor. You know, I need some of that kind of defined here. But at that rate, the $2.5 million that we have in that bond is ate up within 3 months. If we can't access or approve another bond till, say, August, are we putting ourselves in a position where we could potentially run ourselves too thin in our cash flow in that time. Do you foresee that? Have you looked at that?
Well,
yet?
that's why Wes is going to get us a draw schedule, and so we'll know how much time we have. But you have the 2.5 million, the 6 million. I think that gives us
Quite
enough
a bit
time.
of draw.
And we don't pay
Yeah,
anything, we don't pay anything
The
up
only,
front. Go ahead, Wes, sorry, I got you wrong there.
no, you're okay. The only upfront cost is gonna be for the pre-manufactured buildings to pay for the rest of that design, and that's a direct purchase order through the county. And then the kitchen equipment, the rest of the work will be paid as the work is completed. So we won't even bring it to the court and present it for payment unless that material is on site and installed. So the first few pay apps, you're basically just gonna be, it's gonna be dirt work and demo type work. So it'll be relatively small in the overall picture of this entire scope.
So Wes, what are those, what is the general cost estimate of those two structures and those upfront costs then?
The price for these structures were almost 1.4 to begin with, and they cut 220 out, so it's around a little over 1.2, somewhere in there, and that'll be tax-free. The kitchen equipment, we don't have an exact on, we carried an allowance in there, but it's very small in comparison to that amount. And all you'd be paying for that is the drawings. So, I mean, it's like a $4,000 or $5,000 payment. That's all we'd be looking for on it. And that's straight to the kitchen equipment supplier.
And we will also do a resolution for the bond, correct? So that any expenses that we incur before we complete the bond, we'll be able to reimburse the general fund.
Squire Tanner, did you have a hand up?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Any other questions? I just want to thank Randy for coming down, very, very helpful. I want to thank Keith for being here, Jim and Wes for being on. Wes, I know you're somewhere else, but I appreciate you tuning in, and of course our Deputy Jack Kennedy, who's been very vested in this project, for getting on. So if it's okay with the court, we're just going to head to the voting session. I'm going to have clerk, please call roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Here.
Squire Blackburn.
Present.
Squire Dykus.
Here.
Squire Herod.
Here.
Squire Tanner.
Here.
Squire Wisman.
Present.
Judge Miller.
Present. Thank you, clerk. Alrighty, our first agenda item is authorization to award bid package number 2 to Rise and Sun Development Company, best bidder for general trades regarding Lakeview Park Project Phase 1.
So moved.
Second.
Did you get that, clerk?
Yes.
Judge, discussion?
Okay, go ahead, Squire.
On that one, O'Heal Site Solutions was a lesser bid.
I can clarify that.
Could you please?
Yes, sir.
They had left the pre-manufactured buildings out by accident in their bid, so they were roughly 1.4 short. Wes, did I get that correct?
Yes, sir, and the kitchen. They left the pre-manufactured building and the kitchen off their scope of work when they did.
So that's why they were disqualified.
Thank you.
Wes contacted them and they said they couldn't compete, with where they needed to be.
I remember, just wanted that on the record.
Yep.
Thank you.
Let's just roll call all these. How's that? Let's just go through it.
Okay.
Do you mind, clerk?
That's fine.
All right, go ahead.
Squire Wisman. Squire Sebastian.
Oh, thank you. So I'm going to preface some comments here before I vote, so I won't go back through some of the comments for each of the individual votes. One of the key things we are here today to do is to discuss the transformation of Lakeview Park. And it took vision and courage and commitment for the Franklin County Fiscal Court on July 1st, 1991 to purchase the Carter Farm and transform that into Lakeview Park, a place where generations of Franklin Countyans have started in youth sports programs, my kids, grandkids included. So if you just close your eyes just for a moment, you can visualize pee-wee soccer players chasing balls like swarms of bees. You can visualize the pure joy on a child's face when they hit the ball off the tee the very first time. And I know you hear the laughter ringing across that park from those once-in-a-lifetime moments of togetherness for families and friends. This is what happens at Lakeview Park. And it's a place where teamwork, leadership skills, lifelong friendships, and moments that are etched in people's memories forever are born. That is the Lakeview Park I know. We're here 34 years later, and this Franklin County Fiscal Court is presented with another monumental decision and a similar transformational opportunity. We find ourselves standing on the shoulders of perceptive leaders like Franklin County Judge Executive Bob Arnold and magistrates who sat in chambers before us like Gene Demerson, Carmelo Benassi, Howard Dawson, Jenny Smither, J.W. Luttrell, and Howard Robinson. They had the foresight to look to the future of Franklin County and make a bold move. We're in a new century, and we have unprecedented opportunity to implement the Lakeview Park Master Plan, a plan that our community set in motion through their input in 2021. Our neighbors spoke about the diverse activities that they want available to them, and that input helped the court to reach another monumental decision that led to the purchase of an additional 130 acres that would increase the county park system and enable us to incorporate unique amenities that any community would be thrilled to have. Let's be clear, this is not a plan that's just sitting on a shelf. And we're still hearing from the public. We've all noted that. We've heard from them today about all the opportunities that lie ahead because of this. So the Franklin County Park Master Plan has an opportunity to drive economic growth and community enrichment. Our youth will have assets right here at home they've never had before. New facilities for practices and games that rival, and I would dare say surpass, what we find ourselves driving to every weekend when we take our kids somewhere to do this. More of our families and friends are going to be able to watch our youth playing the sport they love right here. Our community will be the one that other families from other communities are driving to for tournaments. Our hotels, our accommodations will be the ones that they make reservations in. Our restaurants, chain, but especially those local family restaurants that are family owned, will be the ones that are filled with out-of-town visitors. Our shops, our gas stations, they will be the ones that out-of-town visitors spend money in. Our community will be the one that those out-of-town visitors talk about when they go back to their homes. The charm of our unique downtown, the creek that they just canoed on, the tour they took while they were here, and how they look forward, and this is the critical part for me, how they look forward to coming back for a taste of history and our hospitality, leaving them asking themselves, when is the next time we're going to Franklin County? So that is the Lakeview Park our community has asked for. That's the Lakeview Park that our community needs. That's the Lakeview Park that we're working toward. And that is the Lakeview Park that I'm voting for in my commitment to progress. So with that, I'm a yes.
Squire Blackburn.
Well, I want to follow on Squire Sebastian's heels there. I kind of prepared a little bit to say. First and foremost, I want to thank all the Frankfort and Franklin County residents who participated in taking the surveys at the beginning of the planning stage in our comprehensive park plan. We received over 1,200, which was above average for communities our size. And it doesn't matter if I'm at a ball game, the grocery store, or out to eat with my family, someone always asks me about the park project and when we're going to get started. It's been a little over 3 years since the Park Committee selected the Hitchcock Design Group to lead Franklin County's Lakeview Park Master Plan project. This firm has over an 80% build-out rate on projects that they oversee and design. It's been an honor working with them, and I'm excited about the direction our parks are going and the commitment that this court has made to our park system. I want to add, at one time, both parks were in my district, and in the redistricting, Square Dicus has gotten Lakeview. And that's great, and I'm fine with that. That means we're growing. So to say getting where we're at right now has been easy, that'd be misleading. It's been very difficult. But to say it's been rewarding would be an understatement. I'm proud to be someone who's listened to my constituents, to our community, and to the professionals who said Franklin County wants this, Franklin County needs this, and Franklin County deserves this. It's long overdue, and I'm super excited about the vote, and I'm honored to be a part of such a meaningful and historical event. I support my community, and I support this project. And as my good friend and former colleague Scotty Tracy said, why not us? So with that, I vote yes.
Squire Dykus,
Yes.
Squire Harrod,
Well, Squire Blackburn took the words out of my mouth, so I have to come up with something different. But no, this has been a vision of the court and past court. I think it's great for the community. I think it's going to be great for the county. My vote is yes.
Squire Tanner,
I'll make a small statement. I've said it before, we have to deal with now, and this is on the table now. There's some other projects was mentioned here that are down the pike that we need to look at and work at, but they're not on the table now. They're in the future. And we have to deal with what's here now, and I have, in fact, talked to people, and they've talked to me. Most people are very positive about this project. I have very little pushback at all of the people that I've talked with. And I'm sure there's some other opinions out there, but they didn't relay them to me. So with that said, I also, and our commitment to make sure the funding is correct at a later time, my vote is yes.
Squire Westman,
Let's say quite a bit here up front. You know, our community wants so much, and those needs and desires are relegated into each of us elected individuals, and we impart the will of the people and our representing of them through the budget, through the money that we set aside. Those dollars are our obligation to our community, and there's so much that the people in this town and this county want to put in place, whether that's a pool, whether that's internet infrastructure, whether that's road and bridge improvement, whether that's park improvements in Lakeview or otherwise. As a magistrate who represents nearly a third of the county landmass, I have to think about the things that we vote and focus on so much in the more urban core and how those affect the people that live 30 minutes drive from them, who don't have basic necessities like running water, internet service, or paved roads in some capacities. So, you know, this package was bid on December 4th, so don't get confused that there hasn't been time to answer some of these questions. We've only met one time in that period, in a meeting that was not televised for the public, to talk about some of these things. And in 28 months that we've been here, out of our 48, we have still yet to come together and have a discussion about what those priorities of our community are. We talk about them in microcosms, and we limit conversations on agendas to be able to even bring those things up. So I'm frustrated regularly that we've not had conversations about priorities, but those are led by the majority who decide together here what your priorities are. So, and as a element of the last court that's continuing on with the majority members of this court, this is deemed to be the main priority of this community above all else. I think there's a lot of merit in this project, and I understand and I see the benefit of things that are being discussed, like the sports management group, like the sports commission. I really have a problem in the way that it has come about and the process that we've engaged the public and even all of the elected members of this body in getting here. I don't want to vote against this project, but at the time being, without having defined how we're going to pay for this, what money we're going to use, and agreeing upon that, and even some of these elements like the basic blueprints that we don't have in hand yet, to understand how some of these are going to be built out and to be able to have comment on those as one of your elected officials. I'm having difficulty with that. We've not defined how this is going to operate. We should have probably had the Sports Management Commission and the Sports Management Company coinciding with this project. I asked questions last time that we've yet to define where this management company is going to reside in this facility, because there's no place, unless Lakeview has a contract back with this project and whoever ultimately manages it, to house the mowers and the concessions equipment and some of those other things that are going to be auxiliary to this. So I'm having to take a leap of faith, I suppose, but I don't like having all this vague elements around the project. But again, I've unfortunately not been welcomed to be part of the development team, if you will, of defining what this project looks like. So those comments are going to follow through to all of these bids, but I just want to challenge this court in our remaining 20 months to be more open with community, to allow the newly elected members of this body to have more input on the priorities, to have a meeting finally to discuss what our priorities are and how we get to meet those objectives, like a pool, like whatever it's going to cost to get internet service to everybody in this community. And I want to do the big and bold stuff. Don't get me wrong, I want to see economic development in this community, but I represent a district that is very broad, that again doesn't have people with basic running water, who don't have restroom facilities, who don't have internet access so their kids can do NTI days on bad weather days, whose flooding of their roadways and concerns about weight ratings on bridges don't allow them to access and do and develop and have the opportunity that this community wants to see. Now, potentially that could be mitigated somewhat by the revenues of something like this. I understand that, and I do have to commend you all that have worked on this so hard, because I do see the benefit in this element of the park and other elements of the park. But I'm going to have to take a leap of faith for your judgment and your scope and understanding of this project that is still somewhat vague to me in too many ways, and I'm just going to have to vote present.
Judge Miller?
So I had something to read at the end, but I just want to say this is transformational. It's been long journey. Yes. Alrighty. Passed. Authorization to award bid package number 3 to Infinity Design and Construction Group, best bidder for plumbing and HVAC regarding Lakeview Park Project Phase 1.
So moved.
Second.
Squire Sebastian?
Yes.
Squire Blackburn?
I do believe we need more contractors stepping up. We're doing our part over at the CTC, training young folks up. I'm 100% for this. I vote yes.
Squire Dykes?
Yes.
Squire Harrod?
Yes.
Squire Tanner?
Yes, and I like Kelly Dacus's comments.
Squire Westman?
Again, I want to say this is not a no vote. I don't want it represented in that way at all, but it is a vote that is concerned about how we structure paying for this project. And because I don't have agreement on that, and because that potentially means that other projects that this community really wants to see aren't able to be done, because it seems that the majority of our reserves may be the preference of this court to contribute most of our reserves to this project. I'm going to have to vote present.
Judge Miller?
Yes. Motion passes. Authorization to award bid package number 4 to Blue Sky Electric, best bidder for electrical regarding Lakeview Park Project Phase 1.
So moved.
Second.
Squire Sebastian?
Yes.
Squire Blackburn?
Yes.
Squire Dykes?
Yes.
Squire Harrod?
Yes.
Squire Tanner?
Yes.
Squire Westman?
Present.
Judge Miller?
All right. I'm going to read a little something first. As a park committee member and someone who has supported this park project from the beginning, I want to thank everyone, excuse me. Want to thank everyone for their support and most of their patience. A lot of hard work and time has gone into this park project, and it's a privilege working with stakeholders and court members. I want to give another shout out to Randy and Shannon from Hitchcock Group, who's done an amazing job on this. We talked about Amy Quatman earlier. I mean, nobody can argue that we have the best treasurer in the state, so I'm going to give a big shout out to Amy as well. But today's a great example of a successful project that's going to be included in this build out. I want to thank everyone involved in making this transformational project a reality. I'm excited about it, and I want everyone to know it's just the beginning. Franklin County is on the move. We as a court are committed to moving our community forward, and I thank each and every one of you, and I'm honored to be part of this project. So I vote yes. Motion passes. We're building a cool park for our community. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Thank you, Court.